Hi, this is JilMac, and I am going to talk today about XML files. My students know that if they have any questions, they can always give me a call or send me an email or meet on Skype or Google Hangouts or Zoom, whatever works for you. And so I'm going to look at the XML assignment. So we can do it from within Canvas, or we can go directly to JilMac.com with one L, and we can go into workshops and classes. The class I'm teaching this semester is Advanced Web Development, but when you talk about XML, it could be for lots of different classes. So let's just go to the assignment, the XML assignment, which for this class happens to be assignment 5. And we'll scroll down a little bit. The first one was tutoring. And now it's to research XML. So XML is a file type. So there's all kinds of different file types. If you go to Word and do a file save as, let's just open a Word document. What have I got here? I'll just do a new one. And we'll just talk about XML. And I do a file, and then I go down to save as rather than save. It's going to ask you, how do you want to save it? And I usually browse so that I can put it in the right place. But if I want to put this XML document just in my documents, when I click on, and I'm going to move it up a little bit because there's so many of them. So when I click on Save as Type, it defaults, depending on your version of Word, it defaults to DOCX. If it's a newer version, before that it used to be DOC. And this shows you all the different types of files that you can save it as. You can save it as a docx file, as a docm file, with macros enabled, or just a plain doc file from the years 97 to 2003. As a Word template file, as a macro-enabled file, also as a PDF. You can save it as a PDF. You can save it as an XPS, an HTML file. I wouldn't recommend that because, as you'll see with Excel when we export it, it gets a lot of extra code in there. You can save it as rich text formatted or plain text. And you can also export it as an XML file, as well as a Word XML file or a Word 2000 XML file. So I'm going to just export this as an XML file, and if I do that, I'm going to put it in my directory with all my others. For our Advanced Web Dev and Assignment 5. And I'm going to call this a Word XML file. And the extension, excuse me, is XML. So every time you do a different extension, it's going to depend on how the file is formatted. Now XML, if we go out to, so I just wanted you to know that from Word you can export an XML file, from Excel you can export an XML file. Once we start doing things with MySQL database, you can export a file as an XML file. And a good part of my life has been what I call schlepping, where I take data from one format and put it into another. That I'm a data schlepper because I'm always having to get it in and out of the database. So if we go and we look at W3 Schools, one of our favorites, and I'll open it in a new link. When we come to the XML file tutorials that they have, this is what XML looks like. So the XML is saying that this is a note. Here's an opening note tag and a closing note tag. And it has the fields, each note has the fields to and from, and what the heading is, and what the body is. So if we wanted to look and see what display an XML file, this is what it looks like. You have a note, and in the note are all these different fields: to, from, heading, body. If we look at example 2, we see that there's a little bit more. This is going to be a breakfast menu. So we have the opening breakfast menu, and we go down to the closing breakfast menu. So this looks like a database, only you're not doing a MySQL database that we'll be doing in a couple of weeks. You're creating a database that's in a file, that's in a single file. And within this breakfast menu, we have different food types. So the first food type is a Belgian waffle, and it's got a price on it, it's got a description, and it tells how many calories. The second food record is going to be strawberry Belgian waffles versus just Belgian waffles, and they cost a little bit more. So this example, you have another nice XML file. And if we go down to the bottom, we can display it as an XML file, which is this, but we can also display it as an XSLT, which is a little bit easier to read and display. So there's lots of file formats. We're constantly working with file formats. And how do we want them formatted? Do we want them formatted for a word processor, or a spreadsheet, or a database, or an XML file? When we get into Excel, let's bring over Excel. Here's an Excel file. And what I've done is I've created a little database where I've got names and phone numbers and emails. And the first record is JilMac's, and the second record is John Doe's, and the third record is Sally Mae's. If we want to do a file save as, we can save it in all these different formats. Now, Excel has even more formats than Word has. You may be familiar with the comma delimited file, where you have records and then they're delineated, or they're partitioned out with a comma, and that's what the CSV is, the comma separated file. And sometimes Macintoshes do it a little bit different, so you have to have the comma separated values in a Macintosh format versus a old MS-DOS format versus a Macintosh text format. Sometimes the Macs do a little bit different with the quotes and things. But we can do it as an XML file by saving it as XML. And we can save that. And we can replace it. And now if I want to go and look at that XML file, and it's all going to depend on the editor that you look at it with. If I save that XML file, and go back to it, this XML file, and you can tell it's an XML file because here it is up in the name, it looks just like it when we're looking at an XML file format in a spreadsheet. But when I look at it here, am I in the right place? No. Go to our class. Oops, wrong class. Go to assignment 5 and look at that XML, an Excel file in XML format. And notice, let's see if we can view. I wanted to zoom in. Maybe I can control plus. No, that won't do it. I forget how to do it in these. I have them kind of set up small. When I look right here on the file type, it shows me that I have an XML file. So if I look at this XML file and I open it in Notepad++, I'm going to see this is what that Notepad file looks like, what the Excel file looks like. We've got a, Microsoft puts lots of extra code in there. It tells you who the author was, and what day did I create it, and when was it last saved, and what version am I using, and that I'm using Office to create it, and that it's an Excel workbook, and that it has a certain window height, and all of this kind of stuff, long before I get to where I'm talking about the row, and the first row has the name of the fields, name, phone, and email, and the second row has the name JilMac with my phone number and my email address, and the third row has John Doe and his information, and the fourth row has Sally Mae and her information. And then we end this table because it's kind of like a table format. And we can look at it that way. So having different types of file formats is important because we're constantly schlepping the data from the database into a PC application, whether it be word processing. Suppose you had to go to your database and you had to export all the names and addresses because you wanted to do a mailing. In the old days you would do a snail mail, but today you would take all of that information and you would do a mailing with their email addresses. Or if you wanted to create monthly bills for something. There's all kinds of reasons why you have to import data and export data. And XML is a very common one that's used on the web. If somebody wanted to have all the names, some part of the database, you could easily download an XML file rather than giving them direct access to the database. Because when you look at it, you can look at it in all different formats, just like you can write out an XML file so that you could read it in Notepad++. You could also take that Notepad++ and you could send it over to Excel, or you can import a CSV file in Excel. So it's all about importing and exporting files. It's all about getting the data where you need to get the data to do a particular application. And XML just works really well on the web. And so in our assignment, let's see if I can go back to our assignment. Back in our assignment, I have you read about how do you read an XML file on the server, and how do you write to XML file on the server. And if you write to a file on a server, do you have to tell it, do you have to give different permissions to that file? Because once you're working on the web, everything is files. I mean, down on the PC, your own personal computer, you could kind of hide where Macs notoriously don't really tell you what directory or what folder different files are in because you're constantly using the Finder. And on Windows, you're constantly using a product like File Manager. And when we're talking about being on the web, we're using a product like Centora and File Manager so that we can look at these files and kind of get good ideas about them and find out what their permissions are. You can read to this file and you can write to this file. I can while I'm in there. But as an end user, if you wanted them to be able to update an XML file, then you would have to give that file permission, not from just here, but to be written to by the web. And so you get into that kind of stuff. Now, that's all kind of learning about XML. When we go to our before and afters, we're going to be dealing with form handling. But then once you're doing forms, you're taking data and putting it into files or databases, or you're taking information and you're writing it out to a form. And so different people come into this class in different levels. So this is for, just kind of a regular person that has a regular background that's kind of learning about it. But then there's the intermediate. So I give you lots more stuff, and I'm going to be showing you how to look at O'Reilly online books. You can have any one you want. I also go into some more debugging, that once you're dealing with these kind of files, you have to learn how to debug them. And then there's advanced. How do you read and write to it? So depending on what level you're coming in at is going to kind of depend on what you're going to do for this assignment. Some people are, boy, they've been waiting, wanted to know how to do that forever, and other people have enough challenges that they just want to do the regular assignment. I leave that up to you. So XML files are fun. They're so important. W3 Schools is going to walk you through it. They're going to show you some ideas about it. And then for those who want more, we have lots more in-depth things and resources that you can use. So if you have any questions, just give me a call and have fun with XML files. It's fun to look at all the different file formats that you can use that you might not even have realized that Word and Excel and all of the personal computer products, well, now they're more cloud-based products, can do. Have a good day, and I'll talk with you later.